But we'll dive into Leave the World Behind, because that's a movie that everyone's starting to talk about. Directed by Sam Esmail, who directed Mr. Robot, which I never watched. Have you ever watched Mr. Robot?
No, I haven't.
My mom always for years is always like, you need to watch Mr. Robot. And I think Riley also tells me I need to watch Mr. Robot too. So I know that show has a lot of fans, and I know a lot of people love Rami Malek in that, but haven't seen it.
He has a couple Emmys for that, doesn't he? Like
I think so. I mean, I think it's a very well acclaimed TV series, but
yeah.
Leave the World Behind. It's getting a lot of buzz. It's the latest Netflix original film. It's a thriller, apocalyptic thriller. The quick synopsis is: there's no going back to normal. A family's getaway to a luxurious rental home takes an ominous turn when a cyber attack knocks out their devices and two strangers appear at their door. So Julia Roberts, Mahershala Ali, Ethan Hawke, Kevin Bacon. That's probably all the people.
Kevin Bacon kind of comes out of nowhere in this one.
Yeah, that's probably all the name brand people I recognize. But yeah, he's not in it for a whole ton, but they all got to up their Bacon numbers at least. Yeah. So I'll kick it off to you first. Give me your kind of initial thoughts, spoiler free, on Leave the World Behind.
Yeah, I didn't like this movie. I gave it a 39 out of 100, 2 out of 5 stars. I was looking at my rankings. I have it like lower than Ant-Man and the Lost Quantumania. I have it lower than You People, Fast X, Indiana Jones. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm a little too harsh on it, but I didn't like this movie. I think not to hurt Sam Esmail all that much. Like, I hope he's not listening, because I think this is one of the most like just over the top, and Tyler, you tweeted it, jackassery directing performances we've ever gotten, and especially in a long time, man. And we were talking about it pre-pod. It's just like every shot, it over the top, spinning around, like pan around the room, zoom into a person. Every new scene is like a start on something, pan over to the person, and it's just way too much. I don't want to steal all your thoughts from that moment, or from that, Tyler, because I know you feel pretty much the same. But it's just it makes it like one of those movies where maybe it's not as bad if it's just directed with less effort. It just comes off. Sorry, my kid's yelling. It just comes off with like way too much effort, and it's just like way too much, and then it makes the rest of the movie, I just don't care for it as much. It's like a terrorist like attack on the US, but also there's like natural like issues happening, like a flood, and deer are all showing up, and the kid is not to spoil things, kids getting bug bites that are like causing major issue. It just doesn't make sense. Like, if it's a terrorist attack, like none of those things would be happening, so super weird. I just wasn't a fan. I didn't care for any of the characters. Great cast, don't get me wrong, the cast is fantastic, just didn't give a shit about any of the characters. And also super reliant on Friends. So shout out Friends, huge Friends guy. So like 90% of the plot is about like this little girl trying to watch the series finale to Friends. Should have got me on set. I could have just told her the ending. I know that shit beat for beat.
Also, who would ever guess that a Netflix original would be the biggest champion of physical media?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Big physical media win, W at the end. Yeah. Just didn't care for this movie. It's listed as slow burn in like Netflix, and it's just too slow. I don't think it works. And like you said, it's real long. It's like 2.5 hours, 220. Just a long movie. Doesn't work for me. I could see people really liking it. Like it does have like intense moments and creepy moments, but I think it just is downplayed by the fact, for me at least, by all this over directing that's going on. Those are my non-spoiler thoughts. Tyler, you can give your thoughts, but yeah, 39 out of 100. Meh.
Yeah, completely just over-directed, overshot. The cinematographer on this hasn't worked on much, and I feel like he was using this as his highlight reel of like, let's show everything I can do. Because every single shot in this movie was cool, but when you put every single shot that's cool side by side, it was honestly nauseating. Like, every single shot is like, we're going to be upside down and then spin back around. And then the next shot immediately will be a drone that's going 360 around the people. Then like when he's driving in a car, like a simple scene like that, you could tell they had probably like 6 cameras rigged outside the car to just change all these camera angles of these car rigs. So many like mirror shots that are just, and so many just like 360 upside down. Like every single shot back to back all the time was like so intricate for no reason. I'm like, this is just getting to be way too much. And on top of that, the score and the sound effects was like so over the top too. And I feel like this movie made me feel so much dread and like a true thriller, like heart pounding, but like it wasn't earned through the narrative or like the story. It was because they just have a camera that's spinning upside down while they have the loudest score banging in your head. I'm like, yeah, this is making me stressed out and anxious, but not because the film's earning it. It's because it's like a jump scare in a horror movie. You're just throwing cheap stuff at me by doing a creepy music and like a bizarre camera angle. So yeah, of course I'm going to be like anxious about what's about to happen. And it's just hard to really put into perspective until you actually watch the movie, how literally you'll realize it. Like every single shot back to back to back to back. It's like, oh my God. Like it just, I'm sure they could have cut the filming in half if they would have just had normal camera shots, but every single one, they just had to have like I was thinking about like how they're shooting all these. I'm like, this is just a woman walking up the stairs, and they just made it the most intricate drone shot that's going in and out of windows. It was like, there's just no need for this, man. And like I said, a lot of it was cool, and I like appreciated it from a technical aspect, but it's just too much. You just got to be a little more reserved and know when to pull your tricks out of the bag, and they just used it a little too much and left it all out there. I joked in the first line of my Letterboxd review, knock at the Airbnb, because it literally is like Knock at the Cabin movie, but they're at a luxurious Airbnb this time. The plot that kind of sets it into motion is this family, Julia Roberts and Ethan Hawke and their kids live in New York City, and they kind of need a break from the city and the hustle and bustle. So they go out to Long Island, to George's neighbor's house and rent that Airbnb out and just kind of chill. They just want a vacation. And then immediately you kind of realize things are going awry. Power outage happens. Things aren't exactly what they seem. The owner of the Airbnb shows up and knocks at the Airbnb and is like, hey, I know you rented my house, but you need to let us stay here. And I'm like, and then from there, you just kind of get an uncomfortable anxiety that never really lets up until the end. But yeah, I'll kind of leave it there for non-spoilers. And it's, I don't know. My friend asked me last night, he's like, should I watch this? And I was like, I think people will like this. Like there's definitely people I've seen that really like it, not just, average movie watchers, but I've seen like even film like actual critics, like, really appreciate this movie. I've seen a lot of people also like it less than I did, like Cam. But I said, and then he's like, no, he's like, I have a backlog of other movies I've been wanting to watch. I'm like, all right, well, if you got a backlog, like this shouldn't be prioritized over other stuff. I don't think it's a good enough movie to do that. If it's a movie you're looking for something to throw on and you don't have like movies you've been putting off, then you sure throw it on. But and I know people have messaged me about this movie too when they saw my review, and they said they really liked it and really appreciate it, and they think it might benefit from a second watch. Narratively, it might. I don't really want to watch it again just from the cinematography. It is based on a book though, and I can tell the book's probably a really good book, solid book. Like Knock at the Cabin as well was also based on a book. I think the pacing was just awful in this, which I've kind of gone back in my own head of like, is pacing even real, or is it just like you just don't prefer something? But this doesn't have a classic typical 3-act structure because literally.
No, it's got a 12-act structure. There's so many parts in this.
Yeah,
movie.
but
there's so many parts.
And they do the classic like title card, like part 1, part 2. I think
actually
there's like 5, I think is what the final number is, maybe 6. But that just kills so much momentum.
What comes after the flood? Part 5.
The Noise, I think.
Was it? I thought that was before.
I don't
even remember, man. Stupid ass structure.
It just kills when you have 6 different acts in a movie. It just kills so much momentum because something crazy will happen like 45 minutes in. You're like, oh, we're buckled up now. And then it just screeches to a halt and you just get 20 minutes of dialogue.
Yeah, it's like the crazy thing happens for this part. And then there's a crazy thing for this part. And then
it just wasn't well constructed movie. But we'll get into spoilers because I do think people are going to want to hear a little deeper discussion on it. Yeah. Let's see, spoiler warning. Okay, so one of the interesting things, Cam, is, which I don't know if you knew, but Barack Obama was one of the executive producers on this. And
who was?
Barack Obama. He's in his Netflix bag. He produces some documentaries and movies now, but this is a movie about an apocalypse of world war proportions. And Barack Obama's, it's a little just disturbing that he's producing the movie when it's like about like governments attacking. Like, so we're in the spoiler section. We'll kind of go into it. So what this movie is basically a plot for civil war. So like a hacker gets into the US grid, shuts down all the cell phone communications power. So you start seeing like planes falling out of the sky because they don't have the radars or whatever at this point. I don't know. So all the planes are crashing. You see ships showing up on shores of beaches, which that was a pretty cool scene. And then the Tesla autopilot, you see like hundreds of Teslas just being driven to just this
Yeah. I
massive
don't know.
pileup of a crash.
I don't know if you saw, but like the early screening for this was everyone in like a Tesla, and that's pretty cool.
Wait,
That's fun.
like
It was like a drive up. It was like a drive up screening,
oh,
or I saw it
interesting.
online. There was a like early screening for a drive up or something, and everyone got to like get out of there. Like they parked wherever, and then when they showed up, they like all got in Teslas and watched the movie from the Teslas, and that's fine. That's
So
good.
yeah, a little joint marketing with Tesla
Yeah,
in the movie, which is kind
yeah.
of interesting based on the
Which is
movies.
weird because
Yeah, the movie
this
kind of
is
just
kind of
shows
like
off how like
anti Tesla.
yeah, this movie's kind of anti-Tesla. It's like, look, your
Yeah,
car can just be taken over by a hacker and driven 100 miles per hour and crashed as all these cars are just flying at these people.
yeah,
But
super
yeah,
weird.
so hackers take over this grid. So they kind of have like a 3-plot plan. The first plot is to take over the power to make people have no communication. The second plot is to do like mass paranoia, mass like that's what like the noise is. They have like these sirens going off, loud stuff like that they said they used in like Cuba back in the day to like make and people start losing their teeth because the noise and stuff was using like
Wait,
audio
is that why he
warfare.
lost the teeth?
Yeah, that's what Kevin Bacon says. He's like, oh, back when they tried this in Cuba using this audio warfare, some people lost their teeth. So that's
Oh, I thought it was because he got bit by that bug
I think
earlier
that
in the
could be it too.
movie.
Like maybe he had Lyme's disease or something because that's what they thought it was. Like he got bit by like it doesn't explain it because he's like thinks he has Lyme disease and then Kevin Bacon's like no, it's the audio warfare, man. That's why your teeth are falling out.
Interesting. Okay, maybe I missed that one then. That's
Then
on
they
me.
have the propaganda wing where they have these helicopters flying over people, dropping all these pamphlets in Chinese and Japanese languages, just to kind of make people think like, oh, it's the Chinese or Japanese are attacking us right now. So it's just kind of propaganda plus this audio warfare and making people uneasy with all these sirens, plus no communication and technology. Um, and the whole point is to try to get people to turn on each other, which you kind of see the scene with Mahershala Ali and Kevin Bacon, which I don't know. I like get what they're going for there. I think there's a lot they're trying to talk about with race and class in this and how people are going to turn against each other when the apocalypse type stuff starts hitting. But I just don't think that scene really worked for me to kind of show like the racial tensions and the how different people are going to start turning on each other. Because Kevin Bacon's just a dude with a house with resources, and these people are coming to like give us your resources. So like, if I'm in an apocalypse, I'm going to be a little abrasive too. Be like, I got all my family in here, and I stocked up for this. I was a doomsday prepper, so you guys can like screw off. Like I'm not going to just trust anyone. But I feel like they tried to make it like this big
Yeah.
thing, and then Mahershala Ali's like, oh man, like this is the beginning of the end if people aren't trusting each other. And there's also like what I never understood is Mahershala Ali is like some banker for like some Department of Defense, like higher up. So he like knows all the inside scoop on all this stuff that's going on. I don't know. And then
Yeah, they
then
almost made it seem like it was like premeditated, like it was like people knew it was coming, and maybe they did. I don't know, who cares?
well,
But
because they
like
said they
you're,
had like the plans, like he knew that this was a plan for like the most efficient way to make like a civilization collapse was like what they were
yeah,
doing or something. It's some
yeah.
like plan that they had that like terrified his guy who hired him. And you of course see that final scene where which is like honestly just like a terrifying scene to see where it's like New York City
Just
completely
shooting each
flattened by
other.
like
Yeah.
so many bombs, like just like, getting absolutely pummeled, like every single
Yeah, who's all
skyscraper in the
got these
city
bombs,
destroyed.
man? Like, I'm not living in any city. Look out, George. Like, why do
That's
people have this many
that's why I
bombs?
don't get because like the movie's like about inducing a civil war, but like how are
Yeah,
like the average humans just bombing New York City to a
it-
rubble? So
yeah.
like
I
was
don't
it a
know.
civil war? Was it an external war? I don't know. What spoiler thoughts do you have?
Nothing. You kind of covered it. Dude. I thought it was like he gets bit by a bug or something early on in the movie, and then starts losing his teeth. That's kind of what I assume. But clearly, I'm incorrect. Um, but yeah, they like you said, the whole idea is like if you make an entire civilization collapse, they'll turn on themselves. Um, and which is probably fair. It's like we're if a lot of unknown things are happening and people are like the cell phone lines are turning off, power's going out, Tesla cars are driving themselves, running into each other, blocking freeways so you can't escape or can't get out. Yeah, probably would turn on people and protect only my family. I don't know these other people. I mean, like if it were like a good friend of mine, like they seem to be fairly fine friends, or like Kevin Bacon and Mahershala Ali know each other, that I would probably like. But if that, I would, bring them in and make sure they're okay. But if I didn't know these people, yeah, I'd probably say fuck off, right? And that's the whole point. The human civilization sucks, but it's nothing new. Like we know the human civilization sucks. It's just like that's the human civilization. We know it sucks, but it's all we got. And I guess that's the message. Because at one point, Ruth is the character. She like says that, but yeah, it just does not work for me. The whole movie was just kind of jackassery, like I said. Hey, bro. And yeah, it's just over the top, unnecessary directing, which made the rest of the movie for me just not work, and I didn't care for the rest of it because of that. In all honesty, like in the first 10 minutes is when I noticed it, when the boat hits and they've got every zoom in shot on every face and then pan around shots on everything. Also, when that boat was a mile away. Oh man, when that boat was a mile away, I was like, yeah, this thing's gonna hit the beach. Like I saw that coming from a mile away, I guess. So shout out me for that. Oh my goodness, bud.
There were so many shocking scenes that were so obvious too. Like you're saying, you see it a mile away. Like when Mahershala Ali sees the watch on the beach, you knew like immediately, like, oh, there's gonna be an arm in it, and he's gonna lift it up, and it's gonna be like a dead person's arm. It's like just so obvious that was coming. But the thing is, like, again, we're just three white dudes on a pod, so we can't really talk like about race relations in a proper or way. But the way they kind of like, because there's a lot of that in this movie where it's trying to talk about like kind of race relations. I think the book probably does it a lot better. But it starts with when they're at this Airbnb that they're renting from Mahershala Ali and his wife and daughter, but you don't really see his wife. So they're at this Airbnb when shit starts going down. And then Mahershala Ali at like 2 a.m. shows up and it's like, hey, like, we need to sleep here tonight. Like, I know you rented it out, but we got to stay here. You guys can stay here too, but we got to stay here with you. Like, I would be very abrasive too. Not like maybe like there's a little race field from her, but I would be like the same thing she was doing, where I'd be like, I got to look at the Airbnb terms and conditions here. Like, my kids are here and you're just like a random dude showing up. Like, and he didn't have his ID to prove who he was. And he's just like, no, you got to let us stay here. Like, it is my house.
Not having your ID is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, what? Like,
and he's like, it's my house. You have to let me stay here, which like valid. But like, if you're an Airbnb host, like you rent it out, like, I feel like you got to have
such
some
a
renters
stupid
rights.
edition. Yeah. No, I'm with you. It's one of those. He's like, you gotta let me in, and I have a key to this drawer, but it takes him like an hour to get the key. So clearly, he doesn't know which key it is. It's like one of those. Like, you could have asked anything about the house. He's been there 20 years. They say you could ask him anything. That dude's probably opened that drawer 600 times in his life. Like, more than that, probably. It's just like, do you know how well you learn your house in 20 years? That's insane.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they tried making it more creepy than it was, in my opinion, and it didn't work for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and like they just be having a normal conversation with normal music, and then all of a sudden Mahershala Ali just like grabs her arm and starts getting really like intense. I'm like, this is just for no reason. You're trying to make this more intense than it needs to be. So that's all I have to say on the movie. It's one that's going to generate a lot of discussion. I think there's a lot of people out there that will like it, because it is like at the end of the day, like it's an apocalyptic movie that I can honestly say the whole time, like I was like, I need to see how this ends. I'm very intrigued and interested. But yeah, I don't know. It just didn't all work for me.
It has a pretty like abrupt like ending.
Mm-hmm.
It like has a kind of an open ending. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, the world's kind of in shambles and everything, but doesn't really give you a conclusion, and I think that works if you really care about the movie. But for me, I didn't, so I don't think it works.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. I guess the theme they're trying to go
last
for.
Episode of Friends,
right? I guess the theme they're going for is like the world is shit. It's all crumbling down, but just find something to make you happy, pretty much. Because the movie ends, like Cam was saying in the non-spoiler section, with like this little girl the whole time is watching Friends, but she's only watching it on her iPad, streaming it. So once the cell service goes out, she can't watch Friends anymore. And she's like talking to her brother the whole time. She's like, man, I just need to know, like, did Ross and Rachel end up together? I need to know how the show ends. Like, that's the only thing in life that's been bringing me happiness. And then the movie ends with her finding a bunker in some rich person's house, going down to the bunker, opening a cabinet and seeing a wall of DVDs in front of her. And she's like, oh my God, the Holy Grail. They had every season of Friends. She pops in the Friends DVD, goes to the very final episode. She's like, let's figure out how this shit ends. And that's the movie ends. So, but very weird for Netflix to be like the coup de grace climax of their movie is, thank God I have all these physical media because no one else can watch anything, but now I can. It's like, maybe it's interesting that Netflix.
I also think this is just funny, like for when things are filmed, like they clearly own the rights to Friends and now they don't. And I don't know if that's what happened, but they like own the rights to Friends. And so I assume they were fine with like putting it in, but now they don't own the rights to Friends. So I wonder if that like,
I wanted to pay royalties or anything.
Yeah, exactly. This is based on a book, like you said, that came out in 2020. I feel like that's just too quick of a turnaround. Like to get, I don't know. It felt just too fast of a turnaround.
I mean, we just talked last week how there's already gonna be a George Soros movie. So I mean,
yeah, I guess that'll be again 3 years from now. But someone just read this book and we're like, yeah, make a movie, bang, movie. Yeah.
Another thing I also didn't understand is how they, like, I think there's probably layers that I'm missing that I need to digest more, because they said Mahershala Ali's like, oh, the closest neighbor's like 3 miles down the road, but then when you go through the woods, there's like this whole neighborhood right behind them. So I was like confused at what the whole layout was. Maybe he was saying like the closest neighbor he knows is like 3 miles down the road, but also you got to think this is Long Island, and not only New York, Long Island, but like you can see Manhattan from like the backyard. So it's not going to be that sparsely populated if they're that close to New York. But I know we don't have resident Long Island expert on the pod this week. George could give us some background, but I think a lot of people like it. It's a fun apocalyptic movie for what it is, but it wasn't all there for me. Just long, man, just very long.
Very long too. Man.
But I'd be intrigued to read the book for sure. I think Knock at the Cabin was definitely the better apocalyptic movie this year, because they are very similar movies and their themes, and like honestly to a T, because Knock at the Cabin was a whole thing about like people turning on each other too, and like I don't know, like it's very similar. I think that one kind of took the cake though.